John, get here. Put this on. My name is John Taylor. I'm from the Central Appalachian Astronomy Club, of which Joe is the president and I'm the vice president. That means I'm in charge of life. Jasmine has inspired me. My talk tonight is going to be about Saturn, but I'm going to start off with talking a little bit about light pollution. First things first. How many of you have ever seen a star during the daylight? Which one? The sun, okay? Why don't you see the rest of the stars during the daylight? Why? Because it's not dark, because the sun's out. That's right. Basically, that's it. The sun brightens our sky. Why is the sky blue? Huh? No. Well, somebody told you wrong. Light refraction is the big answer, but technically, what? Scattering of light. You see, the atmosphere scatters light. And it scatters the blue light first, and the blue light is scattered out and makes the sky blue, because the blue light is scattered first. Once the sun, or as the sun sets, more and more that blue light is scattered out, and you get the red end of the spectrum shows up. That's why it's red at sunset or at sunrise. Okay? But the sky is blue, and the scattered light means there's sky glow all day long because of the sun. I've got about 20 talks on there. He's got to find it. So the sunlight, once you come into twilight, as the sun goes down, once the sun is all the way down, you come into what's called civil twilight. Okay? And as long as you can still read signs and so forth, it's civil twilight. Once the sun gets down about 15 degrees, you get into nautical twilight. And that nautical twilight means that you can still see the horizon out at sea. There's still light enough to do that, and the stars will start to come out. Then you get to, at the end of what's called astronomical twilight, all of the sunlight is completely out of the sky. There's no more solar light pollution. The light pollution that you have left is from you guys. Yeah, your fault. You've got that dusk to dawn light there at the end of your garage. Okay? Put a shield on it. Make Jasmine happy. Okay? One other point, and John Dennis he's around here somewhere. There he is. John Dennis was showing you that machine to measure how dark the sky is. Back in the day before they had those machines, what they determined how dark the sky was the dimmest star you could see naked eye. And that's a 6th magnitude star about, where some of them a little, 6 point something that some people can see. And different people with different acuity of eyes can see differently, but there you go. Okay? So that was light pollution. The sun lightens the sky. Your lights lighten the sky, and that sky glow that's like the sunlight during the day, whatever left, reduces the visibility of stars. because the sky itself is brighter than the stars in cities. When the sky itself is brighter, like in daytime, you don't see any stars. By the way, before I get with my talk on Saturn, I want to tell you guys something. Girls, don't listen. You guys, listen. Right now, high in the western sky, Venus is out. Okay? If you go out in the western sky and look in the western sky just after sunset, just as it gets dark, Venus is up there. Okay? I want you to take your wife or your girlfriend out, hold her hand, and point out Venus and say, Venus, the goddess of love, is looking down on us. That's a task for you, okay? Girls, you can use that with your husbands too. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Saturn. And Saturn, here's the button. Here it is. Saturn is the ring planet. Here's a picture of it. There's the shadow of one of its moons on the surface of the planet. Saturn is probably the astronomer's most interesting target for the public to see. I mean, everybody loves to see Saturn. By the way, if you look in a telescope, you ain't never going to see this. Okay? You will see the planet, and you will see the rings around it and so forth, but it'll be just in white light, and it's not near as clear as this, not near as colorful as this, not near as nice as this. But you actually see it with your own eyes, which is the new thing. And people look through a telescope and they say, wow, that's Saturn. And it's a big deal. Okay. Saturn is one of the naked eye planets that has been known since the ancient times. Named for Greek gods. The Greeks and the Romans thought these planets were gods circling around the sky. Well, I don't know whether they really thought that or not. I think they said they did. At any rate, Saturn was first viewed through a telescope by Galileo Galilei on January 7th, 1610. That's a long while. That might even be before you were born, wasn't it? Yeah. 1610. Before that, the naked eye planets were known. Mercury is so close to the sun that it's never seen outside of twilight. If you see Mercury, you'll never see it in a full dark sky because it's that close to the sun. When the sun sets and Mercury's up, you can see it for half an hour or so after the sun sets, and you can see it, and then it soon sets. Venus is sort of like Mercury, only it can be seen in full dark skies, but it never gets more than about, 45 degrees in, something like that, away from the sun. Never see Venus at midnight. Those are the two planets that are closer to the sun than the Earth. And then there's Mars, and then Jupiter, the giant planet, bigger than all the rest of them put together. And then Saturn. Uranus and Neptune were not known in ancient times. Pluto, the pseudo-planet, wasn't discovered until 1930. This was known since ancient times, and for the first time, Galileo looked at it in a telescope, and quite frankly, folks, it was a rotten telescope. It wasn't very good. But it was the first time anybody had aimed a telescope at the sky. He also looked at Jupiter, and I'll do a side note on Jupiter. He discovered 4 moons around Jupiter. And these 4 moons were circling Jupiter, and Galileo looked at Jupiter for a number of nights in a row, and he saw these 4 little companions moving back and forth to either side of it, and he drew pictures of it and kept track of it, and he realized these were moons orbiting Jupiter. At that time, the teaching was that the Earth was the center of the solar system and the universe, and everything orbited around the Earth. And Galileo saw something orbiting around Jupiter. He was arrested and put in house arrest for the rest of his life for daring to say that these things orbited Jupiter instead of orbiting the Earth. But that's beside the point. Moving right along, if I can see where the button is. Galileo's first drawing of Saturn. Does that look like the picture I showed you a minute ago? Huh? That looks like that, doesn't it? It looks like three donuts or something. So Galileo drew this. That's what he was thinking he was seeing. Remember, the telescope wasn't very good. So this is the best he could do. He got this hazy picture of Saturn, and he drew this. And then he said, it was about a 20-power telescope. He discovered spots on the sun, 4 satellites around Jupiter, surface features on the moon. And he drew that picture of Saturn. To preserve his discovery, Galileo wrote an anagram. This is alphabet soup. And then he asked others to view Saturn and give him their interpretation. And his anagram really meant, I have observed the highest planet to be triple-bodied. In other words, he thought there were 3 bodies to Saturn. Because there was that center part and there was the part on either side of it. And it was because of that telescope, that rock telescope, that he thought that. But that was what Galileo thought at the time. And he tried to, in science sometimes somebody will jump on somebody else's discovery. Galileo didn't want that to happen, so he wrote this anagram. In 1616, that's 6 more years later, he had a little better telescope. And so he drew this drawing of Saturn. Looks a little more like the picture, doesn't it? This showed a spherical planet that can best be described as a planet having cup handles. See, he had no idea what the rings were. Jupiter didn't have rings, it had moons. So he had no idea what the rings were, and he had no concept of rings around a planet. It wasn't something that hit. So he put handles there. To this day, they use the word ansay to describe the outer edges of the ring, which is the Latin word for handles, because of Galileo's mistake. The disappearance of Saturn's companions, those handles disappeared in 1626, and their reappearance really didn't excite the scientific community back then. They were following it, they recognized this, they didn't recognize what was going on. in 29.4 Earth years. Twice during that 29.4 years, the rings are edge-on to the sun, and since the Earth is in an orbit pretty much on the same plane as Saturn's orbit, pretty much, it's 6 degrees off. But since the Earth is orbiting, you got to think about this like suppose you're in a swimming pool and you're floating with your eyeballs in the water, okay? And things are floating in the same plane with you. You see them going across on the same level. Well, Earth and Saturn are 6 degrees off. There's going to be a little smidgen, like something floating above the pool just a little bit. That's the plane of the ecliptic. And all the planets seem to move around the plane of ecliptic above and below by just a little bit. The sun, the moon, the planets move in a path we call the plane of the ecliptic. And it's a line across the sky, and if you get out and look at that, side note, the plane of the ecliptic seems to change through the seasons. During the summer, the sun is high, and the planets are low in the night sky. Because the day and the night are the opposite, the tilt of the plane of the ecliptic. So, in the wintertime, the sun is low at noon compared to when it is in the summer. And in the nighttime, the planets and the moon and so forth are higher in the sky in the winter. So, that's the difference between the plane of the ecliptic in the summer and winter. Teaching you more astronomy than you wanted to learn, aren't I?
You need hula hoops, John.
I need hula hoops, yeah. John Dennis does a little talk on the plane of the ecliptic and so forth with hula hoops. I've never seen him spin one of them.
That was 50 years ago. 60 years.
All right. This is, what is it? What's this picture? You know? Saturn. But why are there all those different pictures? Different periods of time within that 29.4 year cycle around the sun, that where we see edge on just about every 15 years, roughly. This one isn't quite edge on. Okay? That's another picture. This was May of 1995. It was edge on then. Okay? Then in another 15 years, what that would have been in 2010, it would have been edge on again. And then 2025, it will be edge on again. Somewhere in that neighborhood, I don't know exactly. Let me go back there to this other picture though. See, here we're looking at it where you get the most angle, and then you get to the point where there's less angle, and then you get to the point where it's edge on, and it's just a thin line. With today's modern telescopes, you can actually see a little bit of a thin line, but just barely. In 1655, Christian Huygens proposed that Saturn was surrounded by a solid ring, a thin, flat ring. Okay, stop. 1610, three bodies. 1660, cup handles. 1655, they finally figured out that it had rings. It took them that long. He was using a 50-power refractor at that time, that he designed himself. And he discovered Saturn's first moon, Titan. That bookmark that Jasmine passed out to you That's Titan. Titan's Saturn's largest moon. Also, by the way, the largest moon in the solar system. Saturn has more moons than any other planet. But at any rate, Titan is just 7 months before the ring plane crossing that year, and there you go. 1659, Christian Huygens publishes his book Systema Saturnium, in which that's a Latin name, in which he explains that every 14 to 15 years Earth passes through the plane of Saturn's ring, and because of that we see it edge on, and that's just Saturn's just a straight line. So that's the first they really discovered that. Then in 1676, Giovanni Cassini, good Italian name, discovered a gap in the rings, which we now call the Cassini division, and you'll be able to see that in a picture of Saturn from a modern telescope. Galileo couldn't see that. This telescope wasn't quite that good. The outer ring would be called the A ring, the brighter inner ring would be the B ring. Saturn's moons. As of February 23, and I don't know, there might have been a new one discovered since then, but that's pretty recent. Saturn has 83 moons. 63 are confirmed in names, another 20 awaiting confirmation. The International Astronomical Union is the ones that determine the names of planets and stars and so forth. By the way, if you bought a star, the International Astronomical Union doesn't recognize that star being named after you. That's just some scam to get your money. But they will document it in a book, but it means nothing to science. So, if you want to spend your money that way, that's fine. Okay, Saturn's largest moon. Notice 70 of these moons are spherical. What do I mean spherical?
Sphere.
They're ball-shaped. They're not irregular. Okay? So 70 of these moons, Metis, Enceladus, Tethys, Dion, Hephaestus, Rhea, and Titan, the largest. Notice how much larger Titan is than the rest of them? All the rest of the moons are irregular in shape. Mars' two moons, Phobos and Deimos, are irregular in shape. Ours is pretty spherical, as you can see on part of the month moons. Titan is Saturn's largest moon. This is a picture of it. Not too good a picture, but it's a picture. One of the 7 gravitationally rounded moons that orbit around Saturn. The second most distant from those 7. Frequently described as a planet-like moon. It's 50% larger in diameter than Earth's moon, and 80% more massive. It's the second largest moon in the solar system after Jupiter's moon Ganymede. It is larger than the planet Mercury, but only 40% is massive. So, and there's a picture of Saturn. You can see the more prominent Cassini division, and you can see that there are other divisions in the rings around there too. That's the end of my talk. Thank you very much for your kind attention. I hope I interested you at least a little bit. And study astronomy, folks. It's a lot of fun. By the way, if you want to get into astronomy, the cheapest way to get into astronomy, and probably the best, is to buy a pair of binoculars. A pair of halfway decent 8x42 binoculars that you can use for bird watching and looking at other stuff around the house and so forth. Buy a pair of binoculars, get a and that has the different constellations, and start learning the constellations. You can get a good pair of binoculars for less than $100. You can see a lot of different things in the sky with a pair of binoculars, and you can learn the constellations. Once you learn the constellations, then you're ready to start with the rest of astronomy and start talking to some of us about advice about what kind of a telescope to get. Okay? Good enough. Let me get out of this. And somebody else have a prayer for me or not?
Oh. Sean will take care of it, John.
Okay. I just need to eject my.
Thank you, John, for that presentation. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, for
Oh, so Pluto is not recognized as a planet, but it is what?
It's called a dwarf planet.
So it's
There are several in our solar system that are considered dwarf planets. Pluto is just a famous one because it was a planet that wasn't.
Okay, if you lived a long time ago, you might have remembered when Ceres was first discovered. Ceres was the first asteroid to be discovered. And when they discovered it, what did they do? They called it a planet. Then they started discovering a whole bunch of other asteroids. And when they discovered a whole bunch of other asteroids, they realized, these things aren't planets. They're just little bodies between Mars and Jupiter. And so they called them asteroids and changed their mind about Ceres being a planet. Basically, the same thing has happened with Pluto. Pluto is in the Kuiper belt. And it was the first body in the Kuiper belt to be discovered in 1930. It took them a lot longer, and Pluto was a planet for a lot longer than Ceres was. But they eventually realized that there's a whole lot of other bodies out there in the Kuiper belt, and they're smaller, and maybe we don't really want to call them exoplanets, but Pluto's so favorite. Walt Disney named a dog after him. I mean, after all. So, there you go. No question, John.
Chiron, what is it, Chiron?
So is Pluto the biggest dwarf planet?
Yes. But there's some that are very close in size to Pluto. Eris, I think.